In the history of Israel, Jerusalem is this center of worship, and it's a centerpiece of what's going on in the history of God and his people. So you start off, well, there's other things before this, but really where Jerusalem becomes pretty important is about 1000 BC. And that's when David conquers Jerusalem and sets it up as the capital of Israel and the center of worship. Okay? So the arks moved in, and basically God moves into this city. And it was a fortified city before, big walls, hard to get into. In fact, the people that were in there, the Israelites had lived around them for hundreds and hundreds of years, but they could not drive them out because on a high hill, good wall on it, and they actually mocked the Israelites when they came up to take it. And David, through military genius and through just God with him, took this city and made it the center of worship and God. Okay, then the city and its walls have a rocky beginnings and end because they don't stay up and God's people don't stick with God. So the walls are up until 586 BC, and one of the main enemies of Israel comes in, knocks the walls down, takes all the people out, put them in exile. And that's Nebuchadnezzar from Assyria. And for 70 years, all of them are gone, except the poorest of the land. And then there's a return. That return begins in Ezra, okay, and then it continues in Nehemiah. So we find Nehemiah, who's the cupbearer to the king. We find him upset. The people have returned to Israel. They've set the temple back up in Jerusalem, but the city's not safe. The people aren't safe. The enemies of God and the people are moving in and out freely. It's a bad situation. It's a bad situation. And Nehemiah is bothered by this. Okay, I'm not going to belabor too much on the walls, but just understand that's just a little picture 2,500 years ago. And then those walls in Jerusalem have been in turmoil since then. The Romans knocked it down after the Jews took it back over in 70 AD. In the Crusades, the Muslims and the Christians knocked it down a whole bunch of times. And then in the mid-1950s, the Jews took back over Israel, and there was horrible fighting to where Jerusalem became, again, the center of the city of God. So those walls are up and down for the last 3,000 years. When we're talking about walls and guidance, you got to talk about walls, the big type walls, okay? And you talk about the little walls. So all of you, just using walls as an analogy, all of you understand that there are good and bad walls in your life. So good walls are like, say, the doors to my house. It's safe to have my 4 little kids inside the house with us. And then if you extend that a little bit to kind of invisible imaginary walls, it's smart to have some distance between every other person in my neighborhood or my community and my family. That's a healthy wall. Okay? I don't need to also go out to somebody I just met on the street and spill my guts to tell them all my laundry list of things that are wrong. There's a healthy wall that says I don't do that. So there are some barriers to what I will and what I won't share to people. Now there are unhealthy walls too. Sometimes if you get hurt, when somebody pushes on that particular spot, it might be an area that actually you need to kind of work out with someone, but you create a wall. Okay? And so there's a barrier there that's not necessarily helpful at all. Okay, guidance happens in this whole wall analogy too. The good walls, those things that are supposed to flow, guidance can flow pretty naturally. It doesn't flow the same way all the time, but it flows naturally if the good walls are up. If those hurtful walls are up, it could be because you're doing something that you know in your conscience you're not supposed to be doing. It could be because of that hurt has happened. It could be because of bad experiences. Any of those things can block guidance. It can block your ability to hear God or see what he's doing. It could block my ability to meet Scott Batch. Okay? It gets in the way. Okay? Nehemiah, okay, was one that didn't have a lot of those negative walls. So when he saw the state of the people of God, he was grieved and he cried out. Okay, here's what he said. So we're going to read this a little bit. This is from Nehemiah 1, 4 through 8. It's a New Living Version, so we're going to read it from up here, kind of loud and kind of fast. So if you read with me, you can follow the cursor or not, but let's go. When I heard this, I sat down and wept. And in fact, for days I mourned, fasted, and prayed to the God of heaven. Listen to my prayer. Everybody stop right there. Everybody say, listen to my prayer. Now, say it like you mean it. Say, listen to my prayer. Okay, if you have anything that matters for you in life, listen to my prayer should be a burning thing in your heart. Listen to my prayer. Nehemiah gets this thing about the people of God in his heart, and he moves. And he says, God, look, this is wrong. Your people shouldn't be this way. I understand. He says it. I understand that this was the sin of your people. Okay, that's why they lost their walls. They wouldn't follow God. Okay, that's God's people not following God. They lost their walls. They were sent to exile. Okay, however, he said, your people are in disarray. You've already sent them back. Their walls shouldn't be down anymore. Build your walls back up. Listen to my prayer. Say it again. Listen to my prayer. Okay, we're going to keep going. Look, read with me. Look down and see me praying night and day for your people, Israel. I confess we have sinned terribly by not obeying the commands you gave us. Please remember what you said. If you return to me and obey my commands, even if you are exiled to the ends of the earth, I will bring you back to the place I have chosen for my name to be honored. Jerusalem. The place I've chosen for my name to be honored. Jerusalem. Listen to my prayer. Okay, Nehemiah has tons of things in his guidance process. And I'm not going to go over all these things. Just look. He has tons of things. And if you read through chapters 1 through 7 and Ezra before it and at the end of the chapter after it, you could probably point out other things that you see in the process of guidance that Nehemiah goes through. But I'm going to stick to my original tenet. There is no formula in guidance. There's God, there's you, and then there's him trying to direct you, okay? So there is a piece to it we should all have in our lives, which is listen to my prayer. But there are different barriers or walls that will allow that to happen or will impede or break that from happening, okay? Barriers to guidance. Here are some. Fear, doubt, behavior. Behavior, by behavior, I mean things that get in the way of God. That could be little things or big things, but things that get in the way. Fatigue, opposition, battles. Opposition could be somebody coming against you for something you're supposed to be doing. It could be something standing in your way because of some way that you're doing something. Okay? Battles, issues, evil, selfishness. That's a big one. Okay, getting in the way to barriers of guidance, selfishness. We get in the way to guidance with God. Our walls get in the way. Okay, hurt. All of those things are barriers to guidance. When Nehemiah is dealing with his barriers to guidance, he's dealing with a fear that has to do with walls that are opposing him. So walls that are opposing us can create fear, whether, like in that image, they're enemy-related walls where clear evil confronts us, or they're just fear of the reality of a situation. In Nehemiah's case, he's a cupbearer for the king, which means any poison that the king is given, he's supposed to take first. Courageous guy. Joseph said that last week. Well, it's not okay to be in the presence of an ancient king and have a downcast face. You're supposed to be on all the time. Okay, if you think Mickey Mouse, that's how you're supposed to look in the presence of a king. And you can be killed. The king can just kill you for your countenance in his presence. So when the king sees Nehemiah's upset, he basically says, hey, what's wrong? Okay, now that could be a good what's wrong, and that could be a very bad what's wrong to me, Nehemiah. So what happens in Nehemiah, the true danger, the real fear, is the king of Assyria's reaction, or Babylon's reaction, to what is going on in his face. And the real fear is it could cost him his life. What ends up happening is it doesn't cost him his life. So we'll get to that